Say we want to design a video game. One of the things we're going to need are enemies. Now, it would get boring if we only had one type of enemy. We want to have a large range of enemies, all these different things come in to try to hurt us. That's what they all want to do in common. All the enemies want to hurt us. Now, how can we design it so that we have one class that will store all of the information that is general to an enemy? You know, it says you'll need to go and do damage to this person, or simply do damage. Now, we can go ahead and specify that and make the enemies unique in their own way later on, but how can we have that one class which is going to store all the information that you need to know if you're going to be an enemy? All the information the enemies will have in common, such as do damage. And this is going to be with polymorphism, which we're going to look at right now. You see on the side, I have three classes already designed. I have the enemy class, which is going to store the general information. I have the terrorist class and the alien class. So we want to make terrorists and aliens different. However, both of them will want to do damage to us. And how can we make that happen? So I went ahead here and I already included the header files you see up here. You can also copy all of this here, including the namespace definition, all the preprocessor commands, and put this in every single CPP file you have. You see I have it copied up here, so make sure you always do that. And you see I've already designed the constructor in each one just to get that out of the way, but we will not be using it today, so it's not necessary to even look at it. I just got it out of the way. Let's go inside of the enemy class, and we know that enemies are going to want to do damage to us. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go and make a variable to store this damage, right? Whatever we're going to set this to. Now, I didn't get into protected. I said I would. Protected is going to be accessible by your class itself and by the classes that are inheriting from it. So the terrorist class and the alien class are going to be inheriting from the enemy class, making the enemy class the base class, and the terrorist and alien class will be the derived class, or the daughter classes like we've seen before. So we're going to be inheriting from it, and we need to make our variables non-public. That's what we saw. If we made them public, it would slow our program down and subject us to errors, and we don't want any of that. So we can either make it protected or private. Since we want to allow these other classes to have access to it, we are going to make it protected. We'll have integer damage right over here. Simple enough. That's something they're all going to have in common. Now, we need to find a way to allow these classes to set what their damage is going to be. The terrorist and alien are not going to do the same amount of damage. We all know that aliens have these crazy ray beams. While terrorists are scary, aliens are pretty scary as well. So we want the aliens to do a little bit more damage than the terrorists. So we'll go here, and we're going to make a function that will allow us to set damage. Now, we're in the header right here, so we're just going to write the header of the function. So we're going to write void set damage, and I'm going to be passing through integer d as a parameter. So we have all that set up. Now we can go into the CPP file, and I can go ahead and go and write void enemy with 2 colons because we're in the enemy class, and then write set damage because that's the function I want to look at, and then pass the parameter integer d through, and I'm simply going to go and write damage is being set to d. So assign those together, which means that whatever we end up putting for d here will be with damage, and it will be end up stored right here in the protected area of the class. Remember, it's kind of like a little workaround. We need to find a way to set the private variables, and this is the way we go through, or the protected variables, because they both will essentially have the same thing when you're in the main, right? It's going to be protected or private. They'll both not be accessible directly by the main. So we have all this set here. Now we can go ahead and take a look at our other classes. I'm going to find a way how we can set these to have their own unique properties. So go here inside of the terrorist. We'll go into the terrorist.cpp. And I actually want to take a look at one thing before here. We know that we need to make this class derived of the enemy class. Both these classes need to be derived, and we saw that we do this by going here between the curly brace of the class and the word of the class, or the name of the class, so terrorist. You put a semicolon, and then you write public, and then you write the name of the class you want to be inheriting from. In this case, I'm going to be inheriting from the enemy class, so I'll write public enemy. That's actually pretty funny as well, public enemy. It's pretty cool. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with the alien class as well. So we can go in here. We see class alien. I'm going to go write public enemy. Just there, and now both classes are derived and will be able to access the public and protected tabs of the enemy class. So they will have access to, where is it? Over here in the header, they'll have access to void set damage, and they'll be able to use integer damage as well. So we'll go ahead into the terrorist CPP, and we're going to go ahead and make a terrorist attack function. So we're going to write terrorist, we'll put the 2 colons, and then we're just going to write attack. Simple enough, like that. And this is going to be the attack function of the terrorist. And we're going to make this really simple. I don't want to complicate this more than we need to. So in here, I'm going to be printing something out. I'm going to write cout, and I'm going to write the terrorist attacks you for. Then I'm going to write damage for whatever, how much damage we decide to set. And then I'm going to write space damage. And I'm going to end the line. Now what this means here is says here, the terrorist will attack you for, then whatever number we're going to be setting for damage later on, we're going to put right here, and then I'm going to have to write damage as well, because this is going to be an integer here. So this is going to be like 25. I'll need to also say that it's going to be damage, right? So the terrorist attacks you for 25 damage. Now, this function is great, but we need to go ahead and prototype this. And I also forgot something. I forgot to write void over here. We're going to be printing something out. We're not expecting any values in return, so we can use void. And I need to go ahead and prototype this. So I can go into the terrorist.h. I can put it public over here. And I can go ahead and write void attack. Just like that. Simple enough. Now I can go ahead and do the exact same thing inside the alien class. The alien's also going to be attacking us. So we'll go ahead and design this exact same function inside the alien class. So we'll go in here. I'm going to write alien because I'm in the alien class. And now I can write attack. And we'll design something that looks exactly the same thing. Cout, we'll say the alien attacks you for, too many spaces, for damage, end line. Simple enough. We have everything there the way we want it. We also forgot the void here again. I don't know why I forgot it 2 times in a row. That's not a good look. Now I can go into the alien header, go ahead and here, and put void attack. And now we have everything designed. We have these classes inheriting from this one over here. So they're both inheriting from the base class, which is the enemy class, which is going to allow them to use the integer damage. And they're also going to, in a way, allow them to use this void set damage. And we're going to see how we do that in a moment. So we can head over to the main right over here. And now we're going to go ahead and create some objects. So we can go ahead and create terrorist object, not with a space. And I can go ahead and make alien object. I just write them like this to keep it extremely detailed. You can write something simple like TO for terrorist object. You don't have to go ahead and write this entire thing out. It makes you prone to spelling errors, but I just want to keep everything detailed for this series. Now we have all this here. We're getting errors because I think it's giving me an error from here. It should disappear in a sec. Disappear. I have to like open the page and let it know that I prototyped it, so they're gone. Okay. So we have terrorist object, and I have alien object. That's great. Now we know that enemies they're both going to have enemy properties to them. We know they're both from the enemy class. So we can actually go ahead and write enemy, but actually make this a pointer. Make it a pointer, enemy object 1. And we know that pointers need to be assigned to a memory address. And I'm going to actually assign this to the memory address of terrorist object. And I'm going to do this again. I'm going to make a second one, enemy object 2. And I'm going to assign this to the memory address of alien object. And you're going to see exactly why I'm doing this in a moment. Now we saw how we can use objects or pointers, to access information inside of a class. So we can actually go ahead and use this to set the damage. We say the set damage function over here. We're going to access this right now. So I can actually go ahead and go with enemy object 1. You don't need to put pointer again because it knows it's a pointer. You'll make the pointer arrow here, the arrow operator, or it's instead of a dot separator, it's an arrow separator. And you can go ahead and say that you want to use the set damage function. And we're using it for enemy object 1, which we know is terrorist object, right? So this is for the terrorist, and now we can set the damage for the terrorist. How much damage do we want this terrorist to do? Earlier I said 25, we can go with that. So this enemy is going to do 25 damage, and we've just set that. Now let's go ahead and do it again. So we go enemy object 2, set damage, and this is going to be for the alien, and I can say the alien because they have crazy ray guns. I'm not underestimating terrorists, but aliens are pretty scary. So I'm going to go ahead and put 95 damage for those. So now we've allowed the terrorist to do 25 damage, and we've allowed the alien to do 95 damage. You might say, okay, why don't we just go ahead and put this in each class on its own and just make them have their own attack functions? But let's say we had 1,000 types of enemies. This would be the quicker way of doing it. So let's go ahead and now we can actually call upon those those functions inside of the classes themselves. So we want to go and use terrorist object and use the attack function. And we want to go ahead and use alien object and then use its attack function. And now we can go ahead and build and run this, and we can go see if we get the results we want. The build is succeeded. The terrorist attacks you for 25 damage. The alien attacks you for 95 damage. And that will be the end of you because you only have, say, 100 health. So if you guys understood polymorphism, if you have any questions regarding it, please leave it in the comments below and I'll answer you as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the series.